Hi, this is Cam Rogers and you're watching Behind the Words. 72 angels fell with Samael. As an angel is created, it is gifted a function, portfolio, responsibilities. The angel charged with assigning power and function was a powerful angel indeed. I was born in Cairns, Far North Queensland in the early 70s. Nothing in my upbringing suggested that life was going to turn out this way, I suppose. My dad was a drover's cook turned watchmaker. My mother was born in a now defunct mining town. She ran a dress shop and then moved into running a convenience store by a beach. All of our holidays were spent on cattle stations. So it was all sunshine and bull dust and gunfire. What kind of kept me sane, like growing up in Cairns, was movies. I tried to write my first book when I was in the 4th grade. And that was when I realized that pretty much every project you undertake will take 3 times longer than you think it will. But yeah, movies kept me sane, and I wound up getting an American accent out of it. I just watched so much television, which is crazy because my father's about as Australian as you could hope for. My whole family is. Pretty much all my reading material at the time came from, the Cairns library. And what changed everything was coming across a hardcover first edition of William Gibson's Neuromancer. It's kind of hard to convey like what a paradigm shift that was at the time, because it was a kind of writing I'd never come across before. I mean, I know there's similarities to Chandler and other writers in that vein, but I mean, insofar as the world it was creating, the future it was positing, the characters that he came up with, like I'd never seen anything like it before. And while I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate it at the time, the thing I think that affected me the most about Gibson's writing was his capacity for fantastic signal to noise, his ability to evoke something with the fewest, with the smallest number of words possible. The minute I turned 18, I basically just split. A guy named Jean-Pierre Vus, who ran the theatre course at James Cook University, saw me in a production in Cairns and thought me and my friend Eric would make good actors. So he said, look, if you want to come to university, if you want to study theatre, if you want to study acting, you don't have to worry about an audition, just let us know and we'll get you in. See, I never wanted to be an actor. Like, the idea of being an actor always seemed like the idea of being somebody else's puppet, and I always wanted to make something of my own rather than perform something somebody else had made. So the best piece of advice he gave me was that, if you want to be a director, which I did, be an actor first so that you understand the experience of being an actor and you can better communicate to actors. And it was a really good piece of advice, not only for that, but because it made me a better writer. In training to be an actor, it made it a lot easier to step inside somebody else's shoes. And I found that if I could write the immediacy of the experience of being somebody else, then it made for far more impactful writing. Greater signal to noise, better verisimilitude, a better granular sense of truth to what was going on. Writing novels was probably the best and only way to make films. So I fell into that pretty hard. No budget constraints, no crew problems. I could just sit down and I could, the movie would be as good as my ability to tell it. So while books were a very big influence, The Hobbit was a really big influence. Gibson's work was a really big influence. Later on, when I read Neil Gaiman's Sandman, that was a really huge influence as well. Just because that was the first time that I had seen comics take comics away from guys in spandex and use them to, rather than tell stories based in the mythology of a world gone by, it mythologized the everyday. So you had spirits and ghosts and creatures of laneways and you know, things that I could relate to and things that I was surrounded by every day. And it made me realize like what a rich kind of loam for storytelling the world I was in right now was, that you didn't really have to actually make up something from whole cloth. You could actually overlay magic on the stuff that you know really well, the stuff that you're really familiar with. People read stories because they like reading about people. It's not about car chases, it's not about explosions, it's not about the death of empire. It's people like reading stories and going to movies because they're fascinated by people. And if you're going to write about people, and a wide range of people, then you kind of, I think it behooves the writer to have had a fairly broad spectrum life. You know, I cut up chicken for a kebab store beneath a shopping mall with a defecting Soviet weightlifter. I worked for the crime management unit of the Queensland Police Service, dealt with about maybe 50 cases every night, everything ranging from, you know, indecent exposure to multiple homicides. I worked in the property room of the Cairns police station, so, you know, warehouses full of guns, drugs, body parts. I had a kind of a voyeuristic perspective on hundreds of lives that way, and I kind of retro-engineered or reverse-engineered those people's experience through the sort of the mindset that I developed when I was studying acting, in the sense that I would find myself trying to put myself into those people's shoes. Hi, this is Cam Rogers, and you're watching Behind the Words. Music of Razors, that had a fairly unconventional kind of creation. So basically what happened was Gary Crew took a look at some of my stuff and asked me to write for a series for young adults for Lothian, which I did. They wanted a second book, so I wrote a story about a 200-year-old bullet removal specialist, which they didn't think quite fit. So that's fine. But I did wind up showing it to Penguin. They really liked it, and they said, could you write a series of short stories based around this character of Henry? And I said, sure. But I did ask, you do realize that short story collections don't sell, like even Stephen King has a hard time, you know, selling short story collections, but you know, they seemed fine with it, so okay. So I spent a little bit of time, and I came up with about half a dozen stories based around this sort of spectral character with these tools of angel bone that enable him to sort of take a living thing and turn it into something else. And so I wrote them, gave them to Penguin, and they said, yeah, we love it. Small problem, short story collections don't sell. Do you have any ideas about what we could do with this? And so I thought about it for 10 seconds, and I said, yeah, sell it as a novel. And they said, do you feel comfortable doing that? And I said, okay. So I spent the next 9 months, I think. I got rid of one of the short stories and looked at the remaining ones, and there was a context to them that suggested the first half of a novel. So I sort of surgeried the stories around to make up the first half of the novel, and then spent 6 months writing the end of it, and that became Razors, which typically isn't how you're supposed to write a novel, and is kind of a back-asswards way of doing it and kind of painful. When it came to creating Walter and Hope and making them real, as far as I'm concerned, the key element in anything dramatic is depth. And depth comes largely from contrast. So, I mean, and you know, contrast comes from a bunch of conflicting characteristics. Typically, I look for 3 different things that at first blush don't seem to fit well together, and then I basically just lock them in a room until a context infers itself. Now that it grasped the concept of rebellion, it truly understood how much power it held. The power to assign power. In the wake of this revelation, other ideas followed, other realizations. This angel was staggered by the sheer enormity of what it might possess and achieve. Thus, the angel sinned. Grew up in North Queensland, now living in Helsinki, Finland. I'm one of the 3 writers at Remedy Entertainment, the production house that did video games like Max Payne, Alan Wake. So I'm working on what they're calling their next big thing. Hopefully they'll make an announcement about it sometime in the next 12 months. I got that job through a strange series of coincidences. But having been a published author was probably the biggest thing that helped me get that job. So I visited Finland for about 4 months in 2010, fell in love with the country, and bent over backwards trying to find a way to actually live there. And then my friend Adrian Bott in Sussex, who's a well-known writer in his own right, pointed out that Remedy was looking for a writer, and I figured, okay, well, I don't have much video game experience, but you know, I'll apply, it'll be good experience, and if I make it into round 1 or round 2, I'll get feedback, and you know, that'll help me later on. I made it into round 2, and they wanted me to write a spec script based on a scene from Alan Wake that they did away with. They really liked it. That got me a Skype interview, and then based on the Skype interview, they flew me over for an actual face-to-face interview, and then I got it. So now I'm living in Helsinki and working with 2 other really brilliant writers, working on an incredible game that hopefully we'll be able to talk to you about sooner than later. The last thing that Remedy did was a game called Alan Wake, which that was before my time. I wasn't involved with that at all.
Alan Wake aims to create a unique thriller experience. The game seamlessly blends fierce cinematic action with a gripping storyline where things can happen unexpectedly at any time.
Remedy remains like one of my favorite game production companies, and so I got on board with Alan Wake the day it was released, and I think it's a really good example of the kind of work they do. Like, it's clearly a David Lynch, Stephen King inspired story about a lost soul of a writer who's struggling with his life, who's struggling with his own demons, who's struggling with a failing marriage.
The game's lead character, Alan Wake, is a best-selling writer suffering from a writer's block. While vacationing in the idyllic small town of Bright Falls, Wake finds himself trapped in a nightmare. His wife Alice goes missing, and he keeps finding pages from a book he can't even remember writing, and the words are coming true before his eyes.
The story itself, this town that's slowly being overrun by this kind of sentient darkness that's pouring out of this crater lake. His wife goes missing. He's suffering from writer's block. But his whole quest to actually find and save his wife is a quest to find and save his marriage, is a quest to find and save himself. I think more than any other video game company on earth, Remedy is like hyper-focused, super focused on actual storytelling. And what I'm most excited about with this current project is, one of the things I noticed was, like, when film first came out, it took it about 40 years to be accepted as a legitimate storytelling medium, to sort of find its feet and to discover its own language and to work out how to do what it did as well as possible. And then people just accepted, yes, film, legitimate storytelling medium, film's great. Video games, they've been around for about 40 years. And a lot of the content in video games is kind of on a par with some of your cheesiest straight-to-video action films from the 80s. It's all, stern-jawed guys looking for justice and nobody messes with them and blah, blah, blah. Nothing terribly interesting, all fairly one-dimensional. Whereas, like, what we're trying to do at the moment, like, we're setting the bar for ourselves really high. Like, we want to basically be able to punch our weight, in a perfect world, like HBO level, like really like engaging stuff, deep characters, granular, true, fascinating storylines, evolving stuff that will take you by surprise. Like, we want to leave you, like, we want to make you laugh, we want to make you cry, like, we really want to, like, just punch you right in the solar plexus with some amazing stuff. And 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes more, me and 2 other guys, Mikko Rautalahti and Tyler Burton-Smith, sit in this room and we just meticulously go over this stuff and troubleshoot it and yell at each other and jump up and down and have a really good time. And I'm really pleased with what we've got so far. Hi, this is Cam Rogers and you're watching Behind the Words. if you look at, for example, like having gone from Max Payne, which was a very noir-inspired, hell of a lot of fun, straight-up shooter, to Alan Wake, which is more of an action-adventure psychological thriller. You can see a real evolution in their prowess as a company and their prowess as a producer. And now looking at the next thing that they're going to release, I think this next thing is going to be by far and away the best thing they've ever done. I think it's going to blow people. I really think it's going to blow people away. And it's fantastic seeing a company like Remedy, who are so human and so sane and so much fun, with such high standards for themselves and so savvy about what they do, and just seeing them get better and better and better and better. Like, it's just amazingly exciting being there, because I have no idea where they're going to stop. At the moment, it seems to me like my strength is novels, traditional publishing, that kind of thing, signal to noise, lateral thinking, character stuff, dramatic staging, that sort of thing. Tyler is more, it comes from a film and television background, and Miko comes from the game writing background, but he's also written films as well. So we sort of get into the room and we just sort of click. And so, you know, my experience wrestles with their experience, and, you know, I might champion something they won't see the benefit of. And so it'll become like some of the best conversations, you know, you could hope to have. And the awesome thing about working there is there's very little ego in the room, which I understand is kind of uncommon. So I might champion something, but if I see wisdom in why they think it mightn't work, then, you know, I'll let it go. We'll move on. And I'm learning a ton as a result of being there.
Yeah, so Quantum Break is the next true next-gen title. It's coming out for the Xbox One, and the great thing about it is that it comes both with the game and it comes with a full season of a high-quality television show on the same disc. And the decisions that you make in the game affect your director's cut of the show. And the information that you learn from watching the show affects the decisions that you make in the game. This is storytelling in a game that hasn't really been done before. It's a really exciting period in gaming right now.
Let go of me!
I'm not gonna hurt you, but I can't let you go!
Zero state.
Doctor, you're the only one who can fix this.
Yeah, working with a writing team as opposed to working by myself in a room someplace, it's a totally different experience and I love it. Given a choice, I'd work like this all the time. Working by yourself, I mean, it's great, you've got more control, blah, 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 but sometimes that can be a curse. You go to cannibalism, you know, the lack of human contact. But just having other people in the room from different artistic streams. You know, we've got a guy there whose experience is film and television. We've got another guy whose experience is writing games. We've got Sam Lake in the room, who's been behind the wheel of pretty much everything Remedy's ever done. Max Payne, Alan Wake, you know, and then there's me, who's, you know, best known for writing novels, traditional publishing, that kind of thing. And so when you're sitting in a room creating this thing together, it's kind of incredible because, you know, you're bouncing stuff around, you're having a good time, you know, everything that gets fired out gets stress tested from 3 different directions. And anything that they feed to you just creates more ideas until eventually, you know, you lock on what is actually best for the story. A process that, you know, solo could take a person weeks, months. You know, you may not even know until you've got it done. So it's, you know, it's fantastic. I love it.
Paul said people would try to steal our research.
Oh.
Yeah, working in this medium is a little bit strange. When you write a book, it can be 2 years before you see the printed word on the page. With this, you can be in a room with a bunch of guys just having a good time, talking about stuff that you think's flat out cool. And then 2 months later, an actor in Los Angeles is performing that entire scene in front of you. It's the strangest thing.
It's collapsing.
So when I say that I think games are very close to coming into their own as a legitimate storytelling medium, this is what I'm talking about. Like, A-list actors now, like, you know, very talented comedians, very talented actors are signing on to be, you know, included in video games, to work in video games, because Some amazing scripts are coming out for games nowadays. And whereas movies will engage you by sitting you down and crafting, the narrative experience of it in such a way that it draws you in and it makes you feel for the characters, video games do the same thing by making you the characters. And that's what I mean when I say I think that video games are very close to being regarded as a legitimate storytelling medium. The sense of immediacy and investment that video games can provide you, the sense of investment they can provide you in the characters that you play, will affect you profoundly and can stay with you for a very long time. Mass Effect, regarded by many to be the best science fiction universe created in the last 10 to 15 years. And you control so much of what happens to your captain and your crew, all of whom are fully fleshed out personalities with lives. They live and die based on the decisions that you make, profoundly affect people, and people line up around the block to get the next installment of that.
It's collapsing. Move it! Move!
Yeah, so this is where I'm at, from trying to write my first novel in 4th grade to being in Helsinki now, spending a lot of years just, eating dirt, trying to get books published. It's really strange. This time last year, I was living in Footscray on the Dole, and a friend of mine in Sussex said Remedy's looking for a writer. I applied, somehow I got it, and here I am. Everything changed in 9 months. Yeah, like Picasso said, I guess, inspiration strikes, but it has to find you working. So I had something to show them. They liked it. I had technique that I could demonstrate, and it got me here. So I guess it just goes to show, even if it feels like things aren't paying out, if you really believe in it, stick at it. Eventually something will break. So yeah, thanks for talking to me. Hope you really like Quantum Break. We think it's really going to blow minds. And yeah, have a good one. See ya.
What an amazing insight into the world of Cameron Rogers. Now, next week we begin our 2-part special titled The Hampton Beach Poetry Series.
I think poetry was always inevitable for me.
Lots of people stop writing when they become adults, and I didn't.
I started writing poetry in early high school to impress a girl. It didn't work.
I was interested in images and ideas, and I started writing a few poems here and there.
But until then, my name's Jess Capolino, and on behalf of the team at Behind the Words, truck on.
The perspective of somebody trying to create something within the structure of a gaming company, and you have to take so many other considerations into account. Personnel cost, man hours, the technology available, the actors that you have, game mechanics, the player's experience of it, what the player will think based on what they've seen in the game so far. Context, it's, huge learning curve, but fascinating.